Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to step into the lecture hall of the great sociologist Emile Durkheim. He grappled with a question that honestly is as relevant today as it was a century ago. What is the actual function of so-called great men or exceptional individuals in our society? And this really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Are these brilliant, exceptional people a threat to the rest of us, or are they our only hope for salvation? You've got the collective on one side, the individual on the other, and as we're about to see, the answer is anything but simple. You know, this debate is not new. Not at all. Societies have always been torn on how to value their greatest minds. I mean, just think about it for a second. Ancient Athens, the very cradle of Western philosophy, it condemned Socrates to death. And yet imperial Rome, it took its leader, Augustus, and literally turned him into a god. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high. Okay, so let's dig into the first major theory. And this one is an extreme viewpoint, championed by the philosopher Ernest Renan. His argument is, well, it's pretty provocative. He basically says that humanity as a whole exists only for its geniuses. This slide just lays out Renan's vision with stunning, almost brutal clarity. He saw humanity as totally partitioned. On one side, you have the elite, the very few who can truly grasp reason and truth. And on the other side, the masses, living in what he called a vegetative stupor, totally content with their sordid pleasures. For Renan, nature only has one goal, to realize the ideal. And only this tiny elite can get the job done. So what about everybody else? What's their purpose? Well, in this worldview, the masses are just the raw material. They're the soil, the compost, from which these rare, exquisite flowers of genius can bloom. The role of the average person is simply to serve and to adore these extraordinary beings who do all the thinking for the rest of humanity. And the logic behind this is just ice-cold efficiency. When someone asked Renan if this brilliant elite should then share its knowledge with everyone else, his response was just, what's the use? He saw it as a colossal waste of time and energy to share profound truths with people he believed were completely incapable of understanding them anyway. All right, let's completely flip the script and look at the polar opposite perspective. This is the argument that genius isn't just unnecessary, but that it's actually a danger to the collective good. From this point of view, you get this whole laundry list of charges against the exceptional individual. They're accused of disturbing the peace, of draining precious national resources, of creating dangerous inequalities, and even of paving the way for dictators. This perspective values stability and equality above all else. And this quote right here, it perfectly captures the zero-sum logic of the whole argument. The idea is that you can't create a genius without taking from everyone else. That to form one truly great mind, you have to distill millions of little minds, basically draining the intellectual life of a nation for the sake of one person. So what this theory ultimately concludes is that it's just better for everyone to march in lockstep. The trailblazers, the brilliant innovators, they have to slow down and wait for the laggards. The belief is that a kind of barren, blind equality is actually better than the risks that come with individual greatness. But this is where Durkheim comes in. He looks at both of these extremes and says, nope, you're both wrong. He sees them as equally false and equally dangerous. So he offers a third way, a synthesis that reframes the role of the great individual not as the end goal of humanity, but as its catalyst. Durkheim argues that if a society sacrifices its geniuses for the sake of the masses, it would condemn itself to a kind of living death. It would just go into stasis. Without a higher ideal to reach for, an ideal presented by these exceptional figures, society would basically just doze off into a comfortable, mediocre sleep. So this visual breaks down Durkheim's core idea, what he calls the catalyst effect. Let's walk through it. First, society is in stasis. It's just motionless. Then a great individual appears, and they reveal a higher ideal. This act disrupts everything. It awakens all these dormant feelings in the masses. Sure, there's anxiety, but there's also a sense of possibility. And with that awakening, the whole of society starts to lurch forward, trying to get to that new ideal. They become the engine of progress. So what is their true function then? How do we answer that charge that they're just parasites taking more than they give? Well, this is where Durkheim reveals this beautiful symbiotic relationship between the genius and the masses. See, Durkheim makes a really crucial point here. Even the most brilliant thinker, the most visionary artist, or the most profound poet, they can't exist in a vacuum. They're still human. They need an audience. They crave respect, admiration, understanding. And to get that, they have to turn around, they have to beckon the crowd, and they have to instruct them, pulling everyone up in the process. And Durkheim gives us this fantastic historical example. The kings of France, they surrounded themselves with great men, like the playwrights Racine and Molière. Now, they didn't do it for the people. They did it to lend prestige to the monarchy. But the unintended consequence? The whole of France profited. This patronage actually raised the average level of intelligence and culture across the entire nation. It's fascinating. So this brings us right to Durkheim's final definition. The function of great individuals is to embody the ideal, to shake the rest of humanity out of its sleepiness, and to pull everyone forward to a higher level. They aren't the destination. They're the ones who point the way and get the journey started. In the end, Durkheim really urges us to move beyond this whole elites versus masses debate. For those exceptional people who dedicate their lives to sharing their gifts with the world, who pull all of us forward, he has nothing but warmth. He says simply, let us salute them as benefactors of humanity. And so, that leaves us with one final thought. Durkheim's lecture might be from another time, but his framework is, you could argue, timeless. So if we look at our world today, who are the catalysts? Who is shaking us from our complacency and pulling us all toward a new ideal? Now that is a question worth asking.